Hello guys, we are back again with another problem, and in today's problem is called Jump Game 5. We have solved Jump Game 1, 2 and 3 in our previous video. Now we are going to solve Jump Game 5. This is even a harder problem, and as Jump Game 1 and 2 were DP problem, 3 and 4 are graph problem. They are not specifically DP problem. I mean, they are in no way a DP problem, they are a graph problem. So what we are given here is in array of integers, and what we can do is, and we are starting from 0 this time and not from a random index. So what we are going to do here is, we can either move forward or backward one step, or we can go to its clone element. Like for the example, here we have 100 and the clone element for 100 is this one. So we can move to this element, or we can go to -23, or we can't move backwards for this, but for -23 either we can go to -23 or we can go to 100, and for 404 we can go either to -23 or 200, or we could go to 404 and we would end our game. So what we need to do is, we need to finish we need to reach the end as soon as possible, like in the minimum jumps. So we need to determine the number of minimum jumps that we took to reach the last index. I had to use both the hints and also the previous question. So now what do we have here? We have a really complex code, and I will try to explain you. I'll try to rewrite the code, although I'm not so confident that I might be able to replicate this code, but let's try. What does it take? So first, let's take care of some corner cases. What if the length of the array is equal to 1? Simply return 0. No, we can't. We are already at the end of the array. What if the length of our array is 2, or 2, or the first element of the array is equal to the last element of the array? If this is the case, then we can jump right to the last element, length length -1, and hence we return 1. Many of the cases were covered here. Now we need to move on. Now what I want to do is, I first, for this 404, I have 3 choices. I can move backward, forward, or I could go to this index. So I must know all the 3 choices. I know the backward and the forward choice because all I have is this index, and I need to subtract 1 from it and add 1 to it to reach here. But for this 404 I need to calculate this. So I can do one of the two things. Either I can go on calculating every time where my indexes are and what I want to do, or I can calculate my index upfront and keep it in a list and store that list in a map. So this is what I'm going to do right now. I'll call it a map equals to new hash map. Now what this, I'll start a for loop for int I. Okay, why is it lagging now? For int I equal to 0. Is my charging? Oh, my charging is not on. Hey guys, done. Yeah. Now for this, to I less than array dot length, yeah, and I plus plus. Now what I'll do is, I'll check if my map contains that element, or okay, so there are 2 conditions. Let me first explain you the code, then I can write the code. Either we have already created an specific point for this, or either we haven't. So if my map already contains this key, that means that this is not the first time we are visiting for this key. That means we have already visited for 100, and now what we are doing is, we are simply adding the another index that we got 400. So what I do is I write map dot get and I write the value, which is this I. Then what I do is I add my index to it, which is also I. Now if it seems confusing, let me write this code. I'm inserting a value. If this is the first time I'm coming across this element, let's say 100, what I do is I create a new list and I insert that list in that as the value of that key. So I have inserted this key, and now I have also inserted my list. Now what I want to do is now I want to get my list. So I use this to get my key, which is the list, and now this part has become a list. Yeah, this part has become a list. So what I want to do is I want to add something to my list, and that is my index right now. So after this, if I could print the list in front of you, or the whole map in front of you, it would look something like this. Let me show you. 100 and its index, let's say 1, 3 and 4, and all of them are in an okay, okay, 0, 3 and 4, all of them are in a list. That is it. Now I have completed this. Now what I want to do is I want to create one more thing. I want to create an int visited. As we have already seen in the last question, we would need it. Why do we need it? Because if we don't have a visited, we might go on in a loop. So its size would be array dot length. It would be same size, and I would just mark if I have already visited an element or not. And then I need the number of jumps, so it would be int jumps, let's call it jump, and that would be 0. And I would also return my jump. Okay, now what do I need to do in between? So I'll create a queue. Let's call it queue of integers. It will have integers, and I'll name it queue, and also it would be a new array dq. Done. Now what I want to do here is I want to add my first element to this queue. So I would add it at 0, and since I have visited 0, I would mark the visited as 0, visited of 0 as 1. Yeah, then I'll start a while loop, and in that while loop I'll check if my queue is empty or not. If it is empty, I don't want to get into this while loop. Of course it won't be empty in the first case, but somewhere maybe it becomes empty, so I don't want to have any null pointer exceptions. Again, in this while loop I again want a for loop for int I equals to 0 to, let's first decide what my size would be. So the size would be equal to my queue dot size here. So what I am doing here is I have a queue, and I need to check for all the elements in this queue. So for first element, what it will do is it will just add one. How would that go about is it would add my 0th element, that is 100, and I would add minus 23 as well as not minus 23 the index, so it would add 0 to my queue. Then in that loop what I'll add is 1, and this, what is this, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'll add 4. So I need to check for all the things in my queue. That I mean, I am not doing a breadth first search. Like, I am not taking one element, exploring all the choices, then taking second element, exploring all the choices. What I am doing is taking one element, exploring all the choices, keeping them in a queue. So, what I am going to do now is taking all the elements as one choice, exploring all of the choices and keeping them again in a queue, and going about my things in that way. So I've added here. So now I should be less than n and I plus plus. Now what I want to do is I want to add my elements to the queue, add the indexes to the queue. So I'll check. I'll first create an index. So int index, it would be equal to q dot poll, not q dot poll, q dot poll. Yeah. What this does is it removes the top element of the queue as well as returns the top element of the queue. Now I'll check for few cases. If my index is greater than or equal to 0, index minus 1, I'm so sorry, if my index minus 1 is greater than equal to 0, as well as I shouldn't have visited that index, so my visited of that index should be equal to 0. If it is 1, I don't want to visit it again. Then what I'll do is I'll add that index to my queue, add index minus 1, not that index, the previous element to that index, as well as I'll update the visited. So the visited of index minus 1 should now be equal to 1, not double equals to, equal to 1, and that's it. Now I'll do the same for my index plus 1. Plus 1 should be less than array dot length, length, and the visited of my index minus 1. Okay, I made a mistake there. There. It should be index of minus 1. Now if it is not greater than 0, I won't get a index out of bound exception here, because I've already checked for this condition. If this is fails, and condition won't be checked, so this won't return an index out of bound for less than 0 or greater than array dot length. So it should be 0. If it meets all my conditions, again I'll quickly just add this index, which is plus 1, and again I'll quickly update my visited list, claiming that I have visited in this index. Okay, I have visited this index, and it's 1. Now what I want to do, again a few elements are still left. What is left? All its clones, all the index of its clones. So I check if this has any clones or not. I mean, of course it will be added to this array, there's no point of that, they added to this map, but then the list would contain only one element, so we don't need to care about that much. So what I'll do is I'll check if my map dot contains this key, the key is index, and if it does contain this key, actually the array of index, yeah, it is array of index, I'm so sorry. Okay, if it does contain this key, what I want to do is I want to add all the elements present in that key. So it is num present in map dot get array of index, and yeah, it should be present here. And what I'll do next is I'll check for all the elements and I'll add them in a queue. So it would be queue dot add, it would be num. Then I'll quickly update my visited array to do all the things. Now what I want to do here is, if I have visited one list, I don't want to revisit it. So for example, if I visited 100 again, then again my loop would come around some way that I have 100 again. So if I added 4 elements for this 100, I don't want to add 4 elements for this 100. Now what I'll do is I'll simply remove them from my list. No. Okay, remove this key, so all the values would be removed itself. Again, done. Okay, it was hard. I have completed this. Now coming out of the for loop, I'll just say jump plus plus. Now I want to do something like, what if it's not empty? Then I would do this. I have calculated my index here. I would place another condition. If my index is equal to array dot length minus 1, then what I want to return is, I want to return the number of jumps that I took. I hope everything is fine and everything works. Yeah, let's see. There's an error. Cannot find the simple. Oh, I have, instead of is empty, I wrote is equal. Why? Good, done. Now I hope everything works fine and we should have a 3 here. Okay, I'm submitting my answer. If everything works fine, it would be accepted. It's taking too long, I think. Okay, time limit exceeded for this. I see somewhere we have made something incorrect. Like if we maybe missed adding something here, it should be 0, it should be 0, it's minus 1, 1, it's 1, it's 1, we have updated here. Why is the time limit being exceeded for this question? And it's also 1 for the 0th element, and in the queue I have added this element. Okay, let me go through my code using this example 4, 3 and 9. So what I am going to do here is I have created a map. So let's first simulate a map, and what this map contains now is 0. I don't want indexing, so let's do this. Not this. Okay, so now I want, yeah, now, and it contains 4, 3 and 9. See, there are nothing here, so it would be simple. The answer is 4. We can clearly see it. So what my queue contains right now is my queue contains contains, first it would contain 0, then my queue would process this 0. So while processing, so I'll write in a for loop, let's call it a for. So in my for loop, what it adds, it try to add a minus 1 index. It does not work, so it adds the first index and it has nothing else to add. So for this it works again, so this for it works again, and in this it adds to 0 and it adds the second index. But here, while adding this index, it would also check that it should be equal to 0. So it is not equal to 0, so by my code it should not add 0, it should just have 2, because 2 is not visited and it is adding, and my index minus 1 would be marked as visited, my index plus 1 is being marked as visited. I can't seem to see where I made that mistake, so that it would run out of time here. Yeah, 6 out of 28 test cases pass. I mean, like, okay, we have an issue here. So let me check for all the solutions that I've made, all the submissions that I've made here. I'm making a mistake somewhere. Let me just see where. Okay, it is adding. I hope I am not making a mistake there, so I'll leave it. Now again, this is clear, this is okay. This I added a 0 here, I marked it as 1. My queue is not empty, and if my index equals to -1, return this. Okay, it's simple. I get an index out of my queue every time I check for this, and it should be less than this. And what else do I do? Here I check if this index is valid. It's valid. I check if it index is not visited before. It is not. Then I add it. Then I marked it as visited. I check for if this index is valid. It's valid. I check if this index is visited before. If not, I mark it as visited. Done. Here I check for this. I grab the list out of this and I add those elements there, and I mark them as visited. Yeah, if it contains this key, grab the list for that key, and while we are in that list, what I have added here is I have added the indexes. So num is an index, so I add my index. I check if that index is visited. I don't care if that index is visited or not. I just mark it as visited, and then right in that loop, I remove that key value pair from my map, and after my for loop, I increment my jump, and after my while loop, I return my jump. And if during this anything happens such that my index becomes equal to the last index, I simply return my jump. So why is it failing so hard? I mean, I don't seem to get what the issue is. I'll have to go through this code, and I'll look for my mistake here. Welcome to my stupid world, guys. I wrote queue instead of map here, and that element was removed from the queue instead of the map, and I was facing all the troubles in the world for that mistake. And of course, you don't even notice these mistakes. So that is it, guys. Once you have visited the map, empty the map for that. Remove the key value pair from that map and not from the queue, and the rest of the code works perfectly fine. Thank you so much for staying with me, guys.